remembrance event. Again, 98 lives lost on this day 1 year ago when the Champlain South Tower suddenly collapsed in the middle of the night. We've been bringing you coverage all week long, remembering those lives lost and, of course, the grief that still lives with so many of the families. As we're looking live on stage right now, we are waiting for things to start. We do see Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz is there present. She was very present during the collapse and the days leading up to that. But we are expecting to hear from several people. We do know that they're going to read out loud the names of the 98 people who died during this condo collapse.
And you can see Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz there by the podium, among one of the many people expected to speak today. According to the schedule on the program, the opening is going to be by the Surfside mayor. The newly elected Shlomo Danziger is going to give the opening remarks. First Lady of the United States also there. She landed at MIA earlier this morning around 9 a.m. to give you a sense of how many people are going to be there early this morning to remember the 98 victims lost in what's been an incredibly somber year for so many people.
And we do know that First Lady Jill Biden will be speaking as well. She'll be, or rather will be attending this service. So we are expecting to see her there. She will be coming here to remember those lives lost. And we also know that this is a public memorial lives lost. And we also know that this is a public memorial, but at around 1 a.m., there was a private memorial for the families of the victims. And we were able to get some video of that, but of course, most of it was kept closed off to the media for reasons, of course. They wanted it to be private for the family members.
We had our very own Syra Anwar, who was there keeping an eye on things for us. We had earlier reports on Local 10 News earlier this morning with regards to what was going on and really the overwhelming emotion felt by so many people in what's been a very, very difficult time. Overall, we also have some more stories on our website at local10.com where you can hear some of the survivors and what they've been struggling with in the time since the collapse. As again, you're taking a live look right now out of Surfside, where a public memorial service is expected to start any minute now. We'll carry it for you live for the next couple of hours until it wraps up and then update you on the Local 10 News at noon, as well as we continue this team coverage that we've been keeping up for you all morning long.
And you know, we may remember as we sort of go back to a year ago when this all happened, that tower collapsing at around 1:30 in the morning, hearing a loud boom and seeing that dust of smoke. And it took nearly a month for crews to recover the remains and for authorities to even identify all of the victims. It was an agonizing time for those who were waiting to get word on if their loved ones even survived this collapse. And of course, as the days went on, that realization hitting that anyone who was not identified or not found most likely was trapped in that rubble. But we may remember, Gio, you were live on air when this all happened, and the days leading up to this search and what ended up being a search and rescue to a search and recovery, so many obstacles along the way. We had storms, flooding, even fires, while crews were trying to get through that rubble and try to see if they could save any lives that may have been trapped.
And you mentioned the crews as well. I mean, we'd be remiss to forget the people that responded so quickly, so strongly to what happened that day. It's not just the families that were impacted, but so many people that we talked to, you were there on the ground as well, with regards to what they saw from the ground level after that collapse. And considering it was so early in the morning, it was so dark, you were still trying to figure out what you could see, what you couldn't see, and all the sounds, all the reaction were so overwhelming at first. And to think a year later, that's still something that's sitting on their minds with regards to what they saw and how many of their colleagues saw what they saw. And it just feels so overwhelming to still think about now.
And you can only imagine those who survived the collapse. And I think a word to describe what they must be feeling, obviously that's sorrow, but really haunted by the images that they saw. And of course, just everyone in this community, as we showed you those live pictures, as we showed you the rubble, as we showed you the rescue efforts, haunting images that we continue to think about when we think about the Surfside condo collapse. I know for a fact whenever I'm in Surfside or anyone's in Surfside and you drive right by where it happened, you feel it in your gut, you feel it in your heart. This is something that has really affected the community and no doubt will continue to affect us for years and years to come.
And some positivity as well. You've seen the outpouring of support from community members as well, moments of charity, moments of unbelievable passion amid the heartbreak. And you're taking a live look again right now, a bit of a wider view as we were zoomed in on the stage where so many people were present who are expected to speak. You see how many have shown up so far to this public memorial and expect a lot more on the edges who perhaps couldn't get in. And this is all on top of the fact that the healing process is so difficult, it's so hard for many because of how each person responds to this. And one more bit of news we want to give you as It looks like it's going to start any minute now. We updated you this morning on Miami-Dade Judge Michael Hansman giving the final approval in what was a $1 billion settlement Thursday morning, coming almost to the day of when this collapse happened, leaving so many families, loved ones, heartbroken. We were giving you that story earlier this morning. More than half of that settlement coming from one company in particular, which was the building security contractor. And of course, that doesn't, make the family members come back. It doesn't make it any easier for so many people having to deal with this. But that's been one piece of the recovery process of so much going on in what's been a very, very long year since this collapse. I
know our very own Christina Vasquez was talking to one of the victims about that settlement, and she even said she doesn't even think this is going to be enough. And there's nothing that can really replace, obviously, the lives lost, but when you think about also the possessions, photographs that were timeless, or mementos, family heirlooms, all of that lost in this collapse. Of course, the lives being the most heartbreaking, but you think about all these people who had to start their lives essentially over and from scratch after all of this happened. And still, as we reach this 1 year anniversary, there are still so many questions about what happened. Why was this such a failure? How did this building fail? And there's still a lot, of course, in the investigative process that is taking place to figure out exactly what went wrong that caused this condo to collapse. But, stories that followed up in the days and months after this collapse was doing inspections on a lot of these condos who were reaching that mark when they needed to get those re-inspections. And so many people realizing that some of these condos were actually not structurally safe. And we saw a lot of people having to leave their condos and wait for word to get back in. And this sort of started that ripple effect. Looks like we may be starting soon, but of course, once it starts, we're going to take it to you live. And like we mentioned, we're going to go straight through this and, of course, into Local 10 News at noon. But you will not miss a moment of this memorial service. It is very important for us to air this, to show this, and, of course, to remember those lives lost.
And you mentioned the referendum that this collapse served as not only a reflection of what is going on with building codes down here in South Florida, but really nationwide as well. And of course, Florida is, of course, requiring statewide recertification of condos. That's happening quickly.
And we do have our Local 10 News reporter, Andrew Perez, is at this event right now. I believe he's going to be able to talk to us for a little bit until this starts. But Andrew, you're there. Hopefully you can hear us. We know that you've been out there all morning long. Just sort of describe to us sort of the overall mood. We know that this is a somber day and no doubt something that is just very painful for this community.
Yeah, and the setup is really, really, it's hard to look at this setup. This is a ceremony, a memorial that's going to be happening just feet away from the condo collapse site. It's within view of where everybody you see here is sitting. People are starting to take their seats. It seems they're going to be starting any moment now, but all along this tent there are all these torches that are lined up, each one representing one of the 98 victims that died in this condo collapse that happened a year ago. A year ago sounds like a lot of time, but for these families, for the community, even the first responders out here, some of whom haven't seen each other in quite a while from different agencies, they're all here gathering under this tent right now, catching up, talking about what the last year has been like for them, because they also had to deal with a lot during all of this going out to that site. So right now we're just waiting for I believe we're still waiting for the First Lady and the Governor to arrive. And then once that gets going, there's going to be a list of speakers. Family members are expected to speak as well. We're expecting to hear from the First Lady. And then we're also going to hear each of the 98 names read out loud, followed by a moment of silence and then prayer out here just feet away again from the Surfside condo collapse site.
And Andrew, I want to ask you something really quick, but I want to mention it first for anyone watching at home. There at the bottom left of your screen, you notice the photos of the 98 victims that we're remembering a year later. It's going to rotate through the rest of the day as we keep you on air here, and you notice the loving family members that they're often portrayed in these photos. It's heartbreaking to look at, to remember that. Andrew, you mentioned the speakers. Among those speakers, I want to mention Ashley Dean, Raquel Oliveira, Kevin Spiegel, Luis Bermudez, and Martin Langesfeld. Those are some of those who lost family members in this condo collapse. So that's in addition to the Surfside mayor who will make opening remarks, and of course the First Lady talking today as well. A myriad of speakers happening right now. But what I was going to ask you is, we were noticing the live photos here here and you see the outpouring of support, the amount of people that are there gathered under that tent. What does it look like from your perspective in terms of those who perhaps can't make it inside the tent? Is there a gathering of people perhaps outside that also want to pay some sort of respect?
Well, people have been gathering, since yesterday as well. As we've been saying, there was the private ceremony, the private memorial that was just family members, no media, no members of the public were allowed to come. However, people were still outside of the event space just to greet the families as they were going in, to send prayers, to leave flowers. There are still people, here we are a year later, dropping off flowers, dropping off teddy bears, writing little notes on some of the walls around the tent site as well. So people have been coming through the last 24 hours to pay their respects, some of whom can't make it into this event just because of the sheer number of people that are going to be coming to this event, and some of whom just weren't able to make it out today at all. So this has been an ongoing, time of remembrance right now.
All right, Andrew, we're gonna let you continue to gather your things and of course continue to report there. We'll check back in with you as we await for this memorial to start. And I just want you to look at the screen right now. We zoomed in there on a dog there that said therapy dog, and no doubt that is something that I'm sure a lot of people find comfort in. And of course, when we talk about the search and rescue operations, it was such a massive search and rescue operation. In fact, this ended up being the largest emergency response in Florida's history that did not involve a hurricane. And we talk about this being one of the deadliest collapses in U.S. history alone. So that just gives you an idea of the magnitude of what happened, and of course the search and rescue recovery efforts that took place the following days. I mean, when we think about this, we know we've been hit by plenty of hurricanes. When you think about this being the largest emergency response in the state that was not a hurricane, I remember being on the scene. Of course, a lot of us were on the scene, and you all saw the images from home. And we actually talked about this the other day, Gio. It, quite frankly, looked like something you would see from Ground Zero. Looked like what we would see from 9/11. That's what those images reminded all of us of.
And a lot of the people we were talking to that day from here at the desk were calling in and giving us a firsthand account of what they saw in those early morning hours. More often than not, there was a constant referral to 9/11. And that, of course, is stunning to hear in the moment. It was shocking, admittedly, to think, how could that possibly be where your brain is going? But then as the sun rose, as the light shined on everything that we saw, and it was shocking, it was stunning. And that was an apt description as to what was going on. And you mentioned the response team. That's a response from going as far as Mexico to Israel. I mean,
right.
They had
That's right.
a significant outreach to people that were coming in and helping in any way that they could. And I also want to direct your attention to our website when you can. There was something that we shared earlier, and that was.
Gio, I do want to interrupt very quickly here because we are getting some breaking news that's going on around the country right now. I'm getting some information from our producer. Supreme Court opinion is what I understand on Roe v. Wade. That opinion has been released in this moment, and we talked about this. Remember that draft opinion was leaked, in which we saw that opinion from Justice Breyer talking about essentially believing Roe v. Wade should be overturned, and this all had to do with different laws and different cases that made it up to the Supreme Court that allowed the justices to do this. We wanted to bring that to you. We of course are focusing on Surfside, but of course we have to bring that opinion to you because it is something that is very prevalent right now going on across the country that it will no doubt will have quite some implications across the country.
Especially with regards to protests and something that federal officials and security have been prepping for a while. But right now we want to draw your attention back to Surfside as again you're taking a live look right now out of Surfside, and the public memorial service expected to start any minute now. We will carry that for you live. But we want to touch base with a member of our team that we have on the ground there. That is local 10's Ian Margle. He, of course, was on the ground Surfside more than a year ago. Ian, it's been a tumultuous year for so many people, so emotional. Tell us where you are right now, and just looking back, how significant it is for so many people across this community.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're right across the street from where those towers once stood, and right across the street from where this memorial is set to take place any minute now. And one of the things that I think people lose sight of is obviously this is an incredibly difficult day for the families of the victims and the victims themselves, of course, those who survived. But it's also incredibly difficult for the first responders, right, who were here for literally weeks. Even when some of the news sort of moved on to other things, there were first responders that were here for upwards of months at some point. So I was speaking earlier with the chief of Task Force 1, who's one of the search and rescue crews, urban search and rescue crews from right here in South Florida. And what he was telling me was he was here for a really long time afterward. First of all, he was here within the first hour after this happened, but then he was here for weeks and months afterward. And today is the first time that he's been back since the day he left. And he described it as really mixed emotions. What he was saying was, it's really nice to see that the city has rebuilt. He said even seeing the sidewalks and the streets repaved was just sort of this light feeling. But then he said you see the pile, or what used to be the pile, right? And it feels raw was the word that he said. And you have to just imagine all of the feelings that flood back for all of these people. Gio, you mentioned that a year ago. I was here that morning, and I was not here where the collapse happened. I was up the road, and I was speaking with people that were at the reunification center and hoping to be reunited with a lot of people who just never came back. Obviously, 98 people losing their lives during this collapse. And one of the families that lost a loved one was the Spiegel family. Judith Spiegel was one of the victims that was inside this condo when it collapsed. And I spoke with her daughter just a little while ago, right before she went inside. And the word that she used to describe being back here was weird. When what she said was, we've been back, we've seen the memorial, and we've come back to see it and really absorb it all. But she said being back here today, 1 year later, she said it's just a weird feeling, almost surreal. As they were heading back in, her father expected to speak today during that memorial, which again is expected to begin any moment now. But we've been talking to anyone that we can out here, right? Anybody that is the first responders, the legislators, the city leaders. This is getting started right now. We're going to take you live in there.
Ian, I'm going to interrupt you right now. You're right. We're going to take you now to that public memorial service that is starting right now. We see Speaker there at the podium. Let's see if we can listen in.
2 a.m. I'm informed of the impending tragedy. It became the longest moment of my life, lasting almost 30 long days. Etching for my being remains forever. Our holy scriptures give insight with great emphasis on the power of prayer, even in the most challenging and difficult moments. How does one react to the prayers of a grandfather who desperately cries with every fiber of his heartbroken, anguished being, God, I need you now. Please, God, I need you now critically. Or the silent, tear-filled prayers of hundreds of search and rescue heroes standing solemnly at attention as their fellow team member lifts his lifeless child from the carnage of rubble known as the Holy Pile. And to countless prayers continuously uttered silently or with choking cries by thousands waiting with longing impatience for some sign of a positive response to life. There is no answer or any tangible response. Our minds cannot grasp any aspect of these unprecedented, desperate experiences that realign our entire attitude to life and purpose. Our intellect does not have the bandwidth or the capacity to comprehend the esoteric, mysterious spaces of our Creator's mindset, nor how he conducts the orchestra of life. It is why we do not pray with our minds or intellect. We pray with our hearts. Prayer is a cry from the heart to our beloved Father in heaven, to direct his attributes of kindness, to overwhelm the attributes of severity, and to deal with us with absolute, revealed, unquestionable kindness, mercy, and benevolence. At this time, as we commemorate the unfathomable, unforgettable, painful loss of 98 pure, pristine souls, 98 worlds whose eternal continuity merged at this location with their loving Father on high. Let us all join in prayer from our hearts for Almighty God to welcome them under his canopy of righteousness and goodness, and bring solace, consolation, and blessings to their beloved families who continue their important legacy. Let us also pray for the brave men and women who selflessly dedicated their lives to bring honor and dignity to our 98 holy brothers and sisters who have transformed to the archangels hovering in protective oversight over our community. And let us also pray for our entire community who served as a collective warm blanket of kinship that enveloped every person that was in need of the critical goodness, kindness, warmth, caring, empathy, compassion, and selflessness that became the hallmark of our community and reverberated throughout the world. It is a certainty that prayers do not remain unanswered, and God does not overlook any tear. May it be the will of our merciful Father that only kindness and goodness continues to spread its influence in our midst, and that all darkness and negativity will be banished as light will flourish and herald the ultimate immediate redemption with peace of mind and soul here and all over the world.
Thank you, Rabbi Lipsker, for those beautiful words. Distinguished guests, first responders, friends and neighbors, thank you for joining us here today as we remember the 98 lives that were lost here 1 year ago. To the families here today mourning their loved ones, and my neighbors who lost their friends and their past, I thank you for your courage. I cannot begin to imagine how emotional and difficult it must be for you all to be here today on this site. Thank you for your bravery. I have been in politics for 3 months. It hasn't been easy, but it's nothing I can't handle. Growing up, I had a rough upbringing, but I was stubborn and I was a fighter. I can count on one hand how many times I've cried in my life, but one of those times was after my grandfather, who was like a father to me, passed away when I was 17. We had just finished burying him, and while we were walking out of the cemetery, I burst out crying. But it wasn't the pain of his loss that made me cry. It was the thought that in a year or two, the pain would be gone, and I would forget and life would go on without him. But I could tell you here today that in the last 26 years, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought of him. Every event or milestone in my life, good or bad, brings back the pain and the realization that he's missing from my life. The collapse of the Champlain Towers South that night happened in a matter of moments, but its effects will last a lifetime. As a small town of 8 blocks, we all had ties to somebody in that building. The entire town felt the loss of our neighbors, the pain of the families as they waited for their news of their loved ones, and the despair of the residents who were left homeless overnight with nothing but the shirts on their backs. But no one felt the loss as much as you. You had a piece of your hearts torn out that night, leaving a gaping hole that could never be filled. As you find the courage to continue on, your child, your parent, your sibling, your loved one will be missing from your life, absent from graduations, missing at weddings, and no longer around just to call and say hello. You must live with the painful realization that all their hopes and dreams were cut short. But my message to you here today is to tell you that they will continue to live on in you. Every graduation, every wedding, every milestone, every day, you will feel the pain of their absence. You will be thinking of them. Your loved one will always be a part of you. They will never be forgotten, and the town of Surfside will never forget. 98 precious souls forever in our hearts. The town of Surfside was once an obscure little enclave hiding along the Florida coast. The tragic collapse of the Champlain Towers South threw Surfside out into the world stage. But it was a visit by the President of the United States and the First Lady who came to console the families that put our small town on the map. The compassion and tenderness they showed towards the families when they were here was inspirational. We are truly honored to have the First Lady joining us today, and we appreciate the lengths that she has undertaken to be here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce the First Lady of the United States, Dr. Jill Biden.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Danziger, Governor and Casey DeSantis, Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz and Wilson, Mayor Cava, and all the leaders who are with us today. Good morning. Hidden in the crowds, scattered throughout workplaces, grocery stores, and parks, there is a fellowship of loss. To the uninitiated, we look normal, average, whole. But like a secret handshake, I can spot them by the sadness that rests at the corner of their smile, by the curve of their shoulders, as if they can still feel the small arms of a child wrapping their arms around their neck. And though we are strangers, we know untellable truths about one another, that we will spend the rest of our lives longing for a face that is gone forever, and that when they left our world, they took a light inside of us with them. They are some of who might say that hurt fades over time, but we know that's not true. There is a collapsed star spinning inside of us, and we will forever live in its gravity. The things we carry are heavier now, and 1 year later, or many years later, our knees sometimes buckle beneath the weight of our grief. Still, we have discovered moments of grace, too. Somehow, against all odds, we rise from the floor. We find a fortitude that we didn't know we had, and we reach out for help. We realize that we're not alone. Today, we gather to remember the 98 people lost. On behalf of my husband, President Biden, whose hearts and prayers have never left this community, we stand by you today and always. And as we gather, we express gratitude for this community, the firefighters and first responders who bound up wounds and spent weeks working to recover your loved ones. Yes. The members of Surfside who came together to embrace you, who prayed for you every night and wrapped their arms around you. The Americans from across our country who donated and found ways to spread kindness. We honor the light you found in each other, a fellowship that you never wanted to be a part of, but draw strength from just the same. If there is something strong enough to help us carry this burden of grief forward, something able to break its gravitational pull, it's love. The love that makes us tell that story one more time, that makes us laugh with tears in our eyes, and knows a part of them is still inside of us, even though they left before we were done needing them. The love of friends and family who refuse to leave us alone, who remind us that joy can be found even in sorrow. the love of a community that lifts us when we're weak, that carries us. Take it one breath at a time. We are praying for you, and we are grieving with you. God bless you.
Thank you, Madam First Lady. I now have the distinct honor of introducing our governor of the great state of Florida, Ron DeSantis, who is joining us here today with his dear wife, Casey, who, thank God, is healthy and well and with us here today. We are so grateful. At the time of the collapse, I was not the mayor, but an active citizen. I watched with awe as I saw our governor spend time with the families almost daily, showing warmth and compassion, not as a senior political figure, but as a shoulder to cry on and somebody to talk to. Those images of leadership resonated with me and with the rest of the community. Ladies and gentlemen, the Governor, Ron DeSantis.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, 1 year ago, I got a call at about 3 a.m., and when you're governor, the 3 a.m. calls are usually not positive calls. The report was that there had been a partial collapse of a condominium complex down in South Florida, and I knew that was serious. The images in my mind for how it was described to me is maybe some balconies had fallen or something that was potentially manageable. As I made my way down here, I started to see images on TV, and it looked more serious than that. But it didn't hit me the full gravity. I don't think you could appreciate it until you were on this ground looking at it. It was a massive collapse. And these guys, the first responders, were there from the wee hours of the morning. They saved people from the adjacent tower, and they were there working on that pile, doing whatever they could to try to save anybody who may have been a survivor. And I remember standing out a day or two later. You'd see smoke, and it was a tough situation. And so we had the people not only from Miami-Dade, we had teams end up coming from all over the state of Florida and even other states come to help. And so as governor, I just want to say thank you for stepping up and being there. It was not an easy job as a first responder. It was very emotional. I think it took a toll on a lot of people. But I think you showed why in the state of Florida we respect what you do so much. So from our state, just thank you for being there when people needed you. And that was one example, but you saw an entire community mobilize in support of, obviously, families who were wondering what happened with their loved ones, other families who were displaced, and you had individuals step up. You had organizations, all the religious groups stepped up and it got to the point where there was a surplus of people that were wanting to donate items. And so I think that speaks a lot about this community in Surfside, also the greater community in South Florida. But we had people really from all across the state. And so in a very difficult time, you saw a lot of great parts of humanity coming forward to help those in need. And so I was very humbled to be able to see that in the state I'm fortunate to represent. And of course, we did have folks who were able to evacuate the other tower they're all of a sudden left without their possessions, they're left without a roof over their head, and that was a very difficult and traumatic time, and I know we had a lot of people on the ground helping them. I know a lot of money was raised helping them, but that was very, very difficult, and we did what we could, of course, from our office. The local folks did a lot, and then, of course, all our private organizations. But, of course, the devastating aspect of this is losing 98 great individuals. And if you look at the folks who were in Champlain Towers South who passed away that day, they really represented a cross-section of the state of Florida. You had young professionals that were just starting their lives. You had families with kids. You had grandparents who were retired. Some had been longtime residents. Others had been relatively new to the area. They had connections, of course, not just in other parts of our state and country, but they had connections from all over the world, and they represented many different faiths. And I can tell you, when we were waiting those initial days with the hope that some would be rescued, it provided an opportunity for people to learn about some of these individuals. And I can tell you this, people who've never been to Surfside, people who've never even been to the state of Florida, were inspired about the stories and the lives that those 98 people led. They made an impact on their friends, on their family, on their communities, and beyond. And so we really thought it was important at the state of Florida to make sure that their memories live on. And so I was happy in our budget to ask the legislature to dedicate an initial $1 million towards a memorial that can be constructed on this site. And I'm happy to report that was included in the budget that I signed into law. And we also, so that people realize, because before this happened, you go up and down these streets, you see these condo buildings, you don't really think anything of it. But, you know, each little unit really represented a remarkable life and a remarkable story. And so we want to make sure that people understand that. And so we are going to be able to now designate this portion of Collins Avenue, 98 Points of Light Road. So every time people drive by, they're going to be reminded that there were great people that lived in that tower, and that this is a tragedy that wounded this community and our state, but we are not going to forget what they meant to this community and our state, and this sign is a small token to do that. So I want to thank you all for coming to remember the 98, and God bless their memory, and God bless Surfside and the state of Florida.
Thank you. Means a lot. I know as the banner may have to come down soon, it'll be nice to have something hanging up there until we get a memorial put up. I would like to introduce our Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez. Although her title says lieutenant, she stands on her own 2 feet with grace, strength, and dignity. She has been instrumental in helping those affected navigate the bureaucratic complexities and executing their agenda during this time. Ladies and gentlemen, our Lieutenant Governor, Jeanette Nunez.
Good morning. Thank you to all that are gathered here on this solemn day, Governor, all of our elected leaders. We join together in remembering those 98 lives. We remember our hometown heroes that were immediately on the scene, witnesses to an unspeakable tragedy. We remember the urban search and rescue teams that came from all over the country to assist in a grueling task that they are well trained for, but never truly prepared to deal with what they experienced here. We remember the outpouring of support from the international community, in particular our friends from Israel, the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli Defense Forces, United Hatzalah, that provided so much comfort and support to the community. We remember every first responder and emergency management personnel that worked around the clock, responding to this tragedy and yet sharing in the collective grief. And most importantly, we remember the families, friends, and loved ones of those 98 innocent lives. For them, for those of you that are here today, time has stood still. Although everything changed in our state that day, we found a way to muster up the strength and the courage to call upon the values that we share: compassion, perseverance, and resilience. You see, Champlain Towers South was more than just a building, more than just a place of residence. It was truly a microcosm of our South Florida community. The victims, as well as the survivors, come from all walks of life, near and far, different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds, but none of that matters. And 1 year later, we still grieve. We're united in our faith, in one another, and on our community. Strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way, and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, and the mountains quake with their surging. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. May we bind those words in our heart. May we reflect on the meditations of the psalmist and rejoice even in the valley of the shadow of death. And may the memory of those beautiful 98 souls always be a blessing. I pray that God continues to provide comfort to those that are brokenhearted. God bless you all.
Thank you. I would like to introduce Debbie Wasserman Schultz, U.S. Representative from Florida's 23rd Congressional District, which is Surfside. While she advocates for our district in Congress, behind the scenes, Congresswoman Schultz has been listening to the voices of those who were affected by this monumental tragedy and has been an advocate and a fighter for their cause. Ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman Schultz.
Thank you so much, Mayor. 1 year ago, a literal nightmare occurred here. The Champlain Towers South collapse took 98 lives and upended hundreds more. Countless tears fell into the ground around us, and our community continues to recover to this day. Whether it's families here in South Florida, or New York, or Argentina, Venezuela, or Israel, this tragedy has reached across the globe. From the moment this unprecedented collapse occurred and still to this day, first responders, medical personnel, engineers, grief counselors, and caseworkers have painstakingly worked to provide support to the families and conduct a thorough investigation. Our governments and countless generous volunteers, charitable organizations, and individual donors help support the Surfside community and all those affected. Especially Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, who showed steadfast leadership each day, all day, and into the night. Mayor Levine Cava, countless family members told me how grateful they were for your leadership, your patience, your compassion through what was the most difficult time in their lives. You kept our community informed and provided guidance throughout the rescue and recovery efforts, and we are a safer and kinder community with you at the helm. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Senator Jason Pizzo, who was the lead sponsor of the legislation that named the street this section of Collins Avenue. Thank you for your incredible leadership and stewardship through the legislative session. I must also thank President Biden. Dr. Biden, thank you for being here. Thank you to you and President Biden for coming down immediately in the aftermath of the tragedy and being there for our people, spending the painstaking time that it took to, and I watched you go person to person as someone who has felt personal grief yourself, along with the president, to make sure that you showed empathy and that you would commit, as the president did, to see this tragedy all the way through and continue to help to this day. Thank you so very much. As a result of President Biden's effort, resources that were absolutely essential to make sure that we could do everything we could were never in doubt. And of course, our remarkable, relentless first responders who searched around the clock in horrific conditions to find even one survivor. These heroic teams joined us from as far off as Israel and Mexico. So thank them too, as I know we do every single day. Survivors, victims, friends and family, and even first responders all experienced severe emotional trauma, as many lost loved ones, homes, pets, or cherished personal belongings. I know many of you still struggle with the immense personal loss and emotional toll that something of this magnitude brings, and I know that will continue. So I stand here with this entire community to embrace you and remind you that I will continue to support you for as long as it takes. You will have needs. We will be there every step of the way, as long as you need it. Thank you. Progress has thankfully been made to help get to the bottom of this tragedy and to ensure that it never happens again. In Congress, we will continue to pursue policy changes that will weave an even tighter safety net for condominium residents. That is so incredibly essential. Now, while we honor all those we lost 1 year ago today, I know the love and solidarity that springs from this sorrow made us stronger. And if we act boldly, it will protect so many more from similar suffering. In my faith tradition, there is a saying, Chazak, Chazak, Finis Chazak. Be strong, let us be strengthened. May those who lost their sanctuary here that night find personal strength and strength from our community. And the memories of those we lost continue to be a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Jason Pizzo has always been here for our community and has always just been a phone call away. But after the collapse and during the weeks that followed, he became a permanent fixture here in Surfside. I watched as he interacted with the families and community leaders. I watched him advocate for resources and help those providing aid cut through the red tape. It was truly a privilege to witness such dedication, passion, and leadership from our Senator, Jason Pizzo. Thank you.
I called the mayor yesterday and volunteered not to speak today because I knew I'd get a little emotional. It's wonderful to see the First Lady of the United States, but sentimentally, it's wonderful to see the First Lady of the state of Florida. And I'll tell you why. I wasn't here every day. I missed one day, Thursday, July 1st. It was my father's 80th birthday. It was also the day that I found out that he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The very last email he sent to me, and I think there's only 2 people here that know that, was to make sure that I checked in on Mrs. DeSantis to make sure that she was okay. That was his last email. I got here very early, and the very first person I met was Carlos Nebrayev. He was wearing a blue polo shirt soaked through with sweat and tears, saying, "Just let me on that pile. Who are you? What power do you have? What control do you have? Let me on that pile. My son Elon is on that pile." The very first images of helicopters overhead is me standing about 30 feet over here to the left. And my mom calls me and she says, "When are you getting on the pile?" 10 days before this happened, rather blessed circumstance, the governor joined us at the shul and signed Hatzalah into law. Thank you. It must be mentioned that Jewish community services of this community began and will continue to serve the mental health needs of every individual here. I actually didn't want to speak because I did not want to get emotional. But I'll never forget the night that Pablo Langesfeld and Martin sitting behind me, finally, they identified Nicole's body. Over and over and over again. So last year is about losing 99, the 98 souls here and my dad who passed on October 15th. And one day Carlos walks into my office and I said, Carlos, do we have an appointment? He goes, no, you lost your father. I'm here for you, like you were here for us. Let me say this, and it's because I think I'm half Italian. Let's not make tragedy be the time that we get together and not have petty partisanship. Let's not make loss be the time that we come together and embrace and get things done. Let's just stick to the stuff that's important. Because every single one of us here would like to take the days back that we lost with our loved ones. And I do need to mention Kevin Guthrie, who took over for Jared Moskowitz at the Department of Management Services. Kevin Guthrie was here every day until he went home and saw his mother, who passed August 24th. I want to thank all of you. While I helped you get your driver's license and death certificates and probate filings and housing and clothes, and the governor was very receptive on executive orders for forgiveness of a number of things, I want to thank all of you. As I watched my father waste away and die, it was the strength of being able to help you and help your lives and your families rebuild and begin again and begin anew. But I will say this, I want to thank the Miami-Dade County Homicide Unit, and I have to explain why. I used to be a homicide prosecutor here in Miami-Dade County, so I know most of the crew. And I want to tell you this, the care, concern, sensitivity that they treated and the dignity of every single person who was lost here. Sometimes to your disappointment or your anger that things were not getting done fast enough. But I want you to know that they were tediously, painfully, and passionately taking care of every single possible family and identity they possibly could. So the whole world came to Surfside to help. Most of the world will leave after today. As each year passes, I was a Manhattan resident during 9/11. Memories fade. The passion lives. But for each one of you family members, I will tell you this, as I used to tell family members of homicide victims, especially children, the pain never goes away. There is no closure. There is no explanation. There's just the healing and the remembrance to take the ones that we still have living and cherish them and love them and forgive them. And I see Noriega's family here, standing right over there in that building for several straight days waiting to see Hilda, who was 92 years old, who was lost here. Folks, embrace one another, love one another, relax on the other stuff, and just be good and true. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. As a newly elected mayor, Mayor Cava was thrust into perhaps one of the most challenging situations and one could fathom. But her leadership, execution, and deep concern for those affected was evident at every press conference, every meeting with the families, and every difficult decision she had to make along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Miami-Dade County, Mayor Cava.
So 1 year ago today, we all know that our community was rocked by an unimaginable tragedy when Champlain Towers South collapsed in the middle of the night. 98 beautiful lives were lost. Parents, grandparents, daughters, sons, beloved friends, and neighbors. taken from us far too soon. Hace un año, nuestra comunidad sufrió una tragedia inimaginable y perdimos 98 hermanos, hermosas vidas que se fueron demasiado pronto. So we've joined together today on this sacred ground to remember those we lost and to honor all of those whose lives were changed forever that day. Those who lost everything and the families who lost their cherished loved ones. The memories of June 24th and the weeks that followed will stay with me forever, as I know they will with all of us here today. To those in pain, our hearts ache for you now as they did a year ago. We continue to stand with you, and we will do all we can to support you in the long journey back from your loss. Nos reunimos hoy para recordar a los que perdimos y honrar a quienes sus vidas cambiaron para siempre este día. Los que lo perdieron todo y las familias que perdieron a sus seres queridos. Nuestros corazones duelen por ustedes ahora como lo hicieron hace un año. Continuamos apoyándolos en el largo camino del duelo. So today, we also remember the sacrifice and the courage of our first responders. They rushed into a collapsing building to save lives. They gave everything in the search and rescue operation on this site. As mayor of Miami-Dade County, I am extraordinarily proud of the men and women of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue who were the first onto the pile in the middle of the night of June 24th and who continued to lead the operation in the weeks that followed, day in and day out. These are the very finest first responders in the world that were deployed here at Surfside. And they were not just from Miami-Dade. They came from around the country and from around the world, including our partners with the IDF, who arrived on site within hours of the collapse. And we are forever grateful for the extraordinary partnership and support of Israel. To each member of the IDF, and each member, thank you. And to each member of the IDF who traveled across the globe to be with us in our hour of need. So to the hundreds of first responders who worked here around the clock, your dedication and your selflessness were on full display to the entire world. And in the blistering heat, in the pouring rain, through fire and smoke, and against all odds, you poured your heart and soul into the rescue and recovery to get the job done. And I also want to thank all the public servants at all levels who united as never before to ensure that every resource that was needed was brought to bear. To the President, Joe Biden, and our First Lady, Jill Biden, thank you for being with us here today. Thank you for being with us from the beginning. Thank you for being with us always. Thank you. The President activated federal support on day one, within just hours of the collapse, to make sure that we had every tool that we needed and that we could stand in solidarity and in mourning in the days after the building fell. So thank you to FEMA. Administrator Criswell was with us and her team. They played a key role in the long road to recovery. And they still continue to support the families as we all are on our quest for answers and accountability. Yes, thank you. To our governor, Ron DeSantis, his wonderful wife, Casey, to our lieutenant governor, our chief financial officer, to our senators, Pizzo, Book, our congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They were with us. They were with us here. And thank you for joining us, Mayor Danziger for convening us, and Mayor Burkett for being with us every day. Thank you. I want to assure you that Miami-Dade County remains every bit as committed today as we were 1 year ago to do everything we can to try to bring closure. And to Judge Hansman, who's with us on the stage, thank you for your heroic efforts. Our teams, our police, have spent thousands of hours painstakingly sifting through the rubble by hand, in the heat, in the rain, looking for any remains, any property that can be recovered. And even today, teams from our Miami-Dade Police Department are still there, continuing the search. For so many of the first responders who searched the pile as if they were looking for their own loved ones, we know you too continue to wrestle with the memories of those days. And we remain committed to ensuring that you have the tools you need to heal and recover. So, this anniversary brings us together again in remembrance as we say to the families now, as we said to you since day one, you are not alone. We hold you in grief. Your loved ones will not be forgotten. We also stand strong in our commitment to continue leading the way on safety, strengthening building standards, ensuring that a tragedy like this can never, ever happen again. The stories of all of the families who survived the unthinkable and the heroes who gave everything in the search stand as powerful reminders that in the face of great sorrow and unthinkable loss of life, our capacity for hope and love will see us through the darkest days. To all of those watching here and around the world, please pray for our community. We pray for those whose lives were changed forever. And we hope that everyone who survived this tragedy will find peace, and that the memories of those that we've lost will guide and strengthen us now and in all the days ahead. A todos que nos están viendo aquí y el resto del mundo, oren por nuestra comunidad. Oremos para que las familias y los sobrevivientes de esta tragedia encuentren la paz, y que los recuerdos de quienes perdimos nos guían y fortalezcan ahora y siempre. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Consul General Mayor Elbaz Sterinsky started his position in Miami only days before the tragic collapse. From the moment it happened, the Consul General rushed to the community center to lend aid and support. He rented a hotel room here in Surfside and did not leave until everybody had gone. But more than that, he, together with Senator Rick Scott, was responsible for executing the successful deployment of the Israeli search and rescue team led by Colonel Golan Bach to the town of Surfside. So we thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dearest bereaved families. As an Israeli IDF veteran and a father of 5, I'm no stranger to being woken up in the middle of the night. However, There was something different in that phone call at 2 a.m. on June 24th, just 4 days into my tenure as Israel's Consul General in Miami. That sovereign call ended the 4 days of grace I had in my new position. Arriving on site a few hours later, shook me to the core and threw me, my body and soul, into weeks of the forging fire of a terrible disaster and into weeks of anguish, courage, and brotherhood. What I saw and witnessed over those weeks tell in a million voices what pain and agony looks like, and at the same time exemplify the greatness of individual and of the community. I have witnessed the leadership and courage of everybody involved, elected officials, first responders, professionals, and so many good Samaritans. No effort was spared, including making sure that the Israeli team arrived. So many people, Jews and non-Jews, Israelis and non-Israelis, professionals and volunteers came together and showed us what it means to live up to the values of this wonderful country that we talk about so often. I've witnessed the unbreakable bond between the United States and the State of Israel. This bond yielded the first ever foreign military mission on U.S. soil. The State of Israel is proud and humbled to have been given the privilege to give back, if only a fraction, of the support that we get from the United States. We are looking forward to further strengthening this bond during President Biden's upcoming visit to the State of Israel, and are hoping to welcome Governor DeSantis and the First Lady, I hope, in Israel again soon. But important of all, I witnessed the grief and pain of the families. Grief and pain that one can't really fathom. Weeks of hope that were shattered, leaving you, dear families, and the community as a whole in shambles. Dear families, we heard you and reported to perform our human duty and our Jewish virtue of tikkun olam. I urge you, don't fade away. The only way to continue is to be. We hugged, we dug, and we, our nation, our people, our military, are standing here with you today, just as we did 1 year ago, and just as we will forever do. God bless America, God bless Israel, and God bless you.
First Lady, all elected officials, friends, and most important of all, families. For the past year, every morning as I put on my boots, I'm reminded of Surfside, which is due to a deep gash I have on my right boot. I remember the day and the time that the boot was cut. I was working here, just here, with a great American commander, Jim Dobson. It was on the 12th day of our operation, apartment 12, second floor. All of the piercing irons were exposed and very sharp. It was there that my boot was cut. Since then, every morning, as I proudly put on my IDF uniform, I remember you, and I will never forget you. Dear families, the burden on your shoulders is almost unbearable. We came here today from Jerusalem to let you know that you were not alone then and that you are not alone today. And to acknowledge and to acknowledge that when we rise in the morning, know that there is a reason. And that reason is each and every one of us has a significant role to play in this world. So thank you, and God bless you all.
Although his title of CFO alludes to the numbers and digits, Mr. Petronas' humanity and personal concern to do whatever was in his power to help ease the pain of those who were affected was evident during those challenging weeks after the collapse. Amongst his many responsibilities, Mr. Petronas directs and oversees the urban search and rescue team, the USAR teams, across the state of Florida, which responded to 1 year ago. I'd like to introduce Mr. Petronas.
Thank you, Mayor. The Surfside building collapse is one of those events that's going to stick with us forever, every single detail of it. When the Champlain Towers South collapsed, I was already in South Florida with meetings. I even had my 12-year-old son with me, Theo. While we honor and mourn the 98 souls that are no longer with us, we pray for the parents, the brothers, the sisters, the children that were left behind that are trying to put back some type of normal. I saw the work of God when hundreds of Florida's urban search and rescue team members fought and kept fighting for any signs of hope of life. The response effort led by these first responders from our state, our nation, and the world was historic. More than 800 members from state and federal task forces served in part of this mission. With nearly 400 urban search and rescue members from the state of Florida alone, it was the largest deployment ever in the history of the state of Florida that was not hurricane related. They worked 12-hour shifts in the Miami summer, cutting rebar, cutting concrete, filling 5-gallon buckets with debris, hand by hand. And at the same time, they were picking up wedding pictures and children's toys. They battled fire, they battled rain, they battled the heat. Their boots and their gloves were destroyed. They had to keep respirators on to fight the same cancer-causing substances that caused cancer after 9/11. And in fact, some of these same men and women served at 9/11. And then there were the priests and the rabbis, who in my opinion were the unsung heroes at Surfside. On that mountain of rubble, we saw hell on earth. But we also saw God's presence and the men and women who fought with every ounce of their being to save lives. Surfside was a tragedy on a mass scale, and it's going to stick with every single one of us forever. Every one of us mourns, every one of us feels pain, and we all deal with it differently. But from this tragedy, I've improved my relationship with my God and the Greek Orthodox Church. And as we pray for the grace and the peace, may we never, ever forget and honor those 98 souls.
From the moment this horrific tragedy unfolded, Chief Kaminsky immediately deployed and oversaw the entire fire rescue operation at Ground Zero. His tireless efforts gave hope to many families that nothing would stand in the way of finding their loved ones. I'd like to call up Chief Alan Kaminsky of Miami-Dade Fire.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is very humbling to be here today. A day particularly difficult and emotional to each and every one of us. As we gather here today to remember the 98 souls who we tragically lost and taken from us way too soon. 98 families who suffered a tremendous loss and are forever changed following the tragic collapse of the Champlain Towers South a year ago. We also recognize the tremendous impact this tragedy had on all the other families affected by the collapse. And to these families, I want to say, time may not heal all wounds, as the saying goes, as we will never be the same. For on that day, a piece of our souls will forever hurt for those who are no longer here, and for those who are here and whose lives were forever changed. So many were affected by this tragedy, and the scars extend into the lives of those men and women who selflessly searched throughout the rubble with hopes to save lives. The same men and women who day in and day out serve our community. The same individuals who call this place home, and many who will forever be haunted by the memories of those days. When our initial first responding units arrived on scene and saw that 2/3 of a building had collapsed to the ground and that the people that were still inside needed to immediately evacuate the structure, our brave men and women selflessly rose to the challenge and without hesitation entered the building, putting themselves in harm's way, risking their own lives in order to save the life of others, to bring everyone to safety. All without knowing if the remaining 1/3 of the structure would remain standing and uncertain on whether they would make it out of the building. Our crews performed courageously during those initial moments, searching unit after unit for survivors, determined to get everyone out. Others searched the rubble, removing victims, because every single life saved was a treasure to our first responders. These were some of the split-moment decisions being made, and their efforts led to the rescue of 37 people that morning. These crews performed courageously during those initial moments and throughout all of our operations during our response. And as their fire chief, this makes me incredibly proud. Today, I'd like to take a moment and salute them for their bravery and for going above and beyond in the face of extreme dangers with so much uncertainty what the outcome might be. They didn't do this alone. Law enforcement officers from multiple jurisdictions bravely assisted with rescue efforts, and for this, we thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't mention all the other local fire rescue and police agencies that descended over Surfside on that day and the weeks to follow. Thank you all for your camaraderie and for your support. Urban search and rescue teams who were deployed quickly to Surfside continue the task started by Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. We are extremely fortunate to be home of two of the best search and rescue teams in the county, Florida Task Force 1 and Florida Task Force 2. Soon after, all the Florida Task Force teams followed, as well as federal teams from Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and New Jersey arrived with hundreds of task force members ready to assist. International assistance came from Mexico, and elite members of the IDF arrived from Israel to offer assistance and share their knowledge. Day in and day out, these men and women mobilized all kinds of equipment, working 12-hour shifts, conducting extensive search and rescue operations, cutting through concrete and working through dangerous conditions, including extreme heat, rain, an impending hurricane, and the threat of a secondary building collapse, in order to continue to search for precious life under the rubble. This unthinkable tragedy, the deadliest building catastrophe in South Florida history, happened right in our backyard and left a physical, a mental, an emotional toll on all of us in more ways than we could have ever imagined. The magnitude of what took place during the early morning hours of that tragic day and a year later is still very difficult to deal with, the profound heartbreak we experienced that day. What took place here in Surfside has been one of the most traumatic events that our community and our department have ever experienced, that we will never forget. It's taken our MDFR family, our community, our nation, and the world to its core. In closing, I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank the families for having us here today and for sharing this very special, private, difficult, and emotional moment with us. Additionally, I'd like to also thank the brave men and women of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue and all other first responders who are the true heroes in our profession and who continue to do the very best for our community. And to the families present here today, know that since day one, you have and will continue to be in our hearts. Know that no matter how much time has passed, each one of you and your family members will always be part of us. Thank you.
Israel's Home Front Command was established for a simple purpose: to save lives. It operates search and rescue missions in Israel and around the world, aiding in rescue and recovery. Its leader is here with us today, and it's a privilege to introduce Major General Ori Gordon.
First Lady, elected officials, first responders, friends, and family members. Thou did call in trouble, and I rescued thee, from the book of Psalms. Dear families, dear brothers and sisters, people of Surfside community, it was a peaceful, regular, early summer night. No one could have foreseen this devastating collapse that shook your lives and changed them forever. 98 lives, 98 souls, 98 unfulfilled hopes and stories that were buried under the rubble pile of Champlain Towers South in Collins Avenue. I know that there is no cure for your pain and that words could not ease or comfort your loss. But on behalf of the State of Israel, on behalf of the Israeli Defense Forces, and on behalf of the IDF Home Front Command, I want to offer our deep and sincere condolences. Although as rescuers, we always believe there is still hope, unfortunately, now we can say with certainty that no one of the collapse victims could have been rescued alive. But what we were able to do, to help do, was to more accuracy and faster allocate the missing people and set the closure for you, the families. We could not be here if not for the brave and humble leadership of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. You reached out for help, and we sent our best search and rescuers. A small delegation with extreme expertise in the field and professionalism. You led out this operation with sensitivity and immense determination. You trusted us, and we did our best to reply. Our delegation, led by Colonel Golan Vach, helped in two main efforts. The first, allocating the missing person in the rubble pile and helping to extract them out. This effort was led by Chief Alan Kaminsky, a great leader and a partner. And of course, the professional and vigorous action of the hundreds of first responders from the Miami-Dade and all over the country. And moreover, the Florida Task Force 1 and Task Force 2, whom from we've learned quite a bit. The second effort, led by Colonel Elad Edri, and backed by a technological branch in Israel, was with the families, trying to gather as much information as we could to help the teams on the site to allocate the missing more accurately. Again, we find great partnership from the Miami-Dade Police Department and the effort led by Chief Ray Jadala, who with great sensitivity and accuracy led this mission. On behalf of our delegation, I want to thank the Hatzalah, Yedidim, and Zaka organization who enveloped and protected us during these 2 weeks' relentless efforts. And also to express our gratitude to the Jewish communities of Surfside and Bell Harbor for taking us in and making us feel at home. At last but not least, to Surfside Mayor Shlomo Danziger for your full and complete support then and even now by inviting us and making our arrival possible. The United States and Israel are far more than friends and partners. Our mutual commitment is embedded deeply. And I am certain that the partnership made between us and Miami-Dade, between us and Florida task forces will grow and flourish. The course of things during these 2 weeks in June influenced deeply on everyone that was involved. Mutual pain and grief, being together in these stressed times, created lifelong of brotherhood and commitment. Dear families, we share your grief and pain. We stand here, bowing our heads in the memory of your loved ones. Thank you for opening your hearts and letting us in. May you never know such sorrow again. And as for us, when the next call to help will be heard, we will answer without hesitation, as we are committed to reach out and help anyone in trouble and to fulfill our calling to rescue whomever is in need. Thou did call in trouble, and I rescued thee.
I would just like to take a second and acknowledge the attendance of Mayor Dan Gelber from Miami Beach, Mayor Suarez from City of Miami, and Chair Pepe Diaz from Miami-Dade County. These are our neighboring cities, and without you providing the vital aid and support, we wouldn't have been able to move forward as easily. So thank you. We are here today to remember the 98 souls. We are honored and privileged to have the opportunity to hear from a few of the family members who will share their stories of their loved ones and give us a glimpse into these extraordinary people. I would like to call up Luis Bermudez, father of Luis Bermudez, who was 26.
Good morning to everyone. My condolences to all the parents and family members who lost their loved ones that 24th of June. My deepest condolence to the fathers and mothers who lost their sons and their daughters. I'm going through that pain, through that suffering, and there's no words for it. Luillo was 26 years old and a half when he died, when he passed away. I was blessed of raising him for 24 years. And he was my warrior and he's still my hero. Luillo, son, you're my inspiration and you will be for the rest of my life. With you in my life, there's nothing more I need. With your smile, you take my breath away. With your love, you have conquered me and the world. With your spirit, you have made impossible things possible. With your courage, you have made it up to here. With your faith, you have done so much. You have taught me how to believe. God is good. Being with you makes me the happiest human being on earth. Thanks for being my son and let me be the father I am. Love you through the end, there is no end. Papi. Luillo, no matter your condition or muscular dystrophy, you learn how to live life with it, and beside that, you never complain about it. You never gave up. You battled it like a real warrior, and nothing stopped you from reaching out your dreams. You achieved all the goals that you have in mind. You did it, Luillo. There were no obstacles for you, just challenges. And every time these challenges came, you confront them and successfully got through them. And this gave you more strength to go for the next one. You were so powerful. You never gave up. Luillo, with you in my life, I was the happiest human being on earth. You taught me so many things. Among these things, you taught me how to live life without fear. You taught me how to be a father, one of the best. And we found together the meaning of unconditional love. It was you and me both serious condition, and we never had excuses to stop living life as happy as we could. With your lovely smile, you conquered the world. How to believe your happiness and your smile in that wheelchair most of your time. You were teaching a lot of people that there's no limits for you and no excuses to stop dreaming big. You were always after your goals. You opened and got inside so many people's hearts with your smile and your desire of living without limitations, and you did it with no intentions. You made others smile, and that was another blessing. With that smile and your unconditional love, I didn't need much more. Just you, my Luillo. Because of the way you saw things and the way you decided to live life, you made so many things possible that for others were impossible for you to do. That spirit that you had is the one I need for the rest of my life. It will help me a lot to go through this pain as well. I'm so proud of you, Luillo. Besides that great spirit that you had, your courage helped you achieve so many things and goals in your short but beautiful life. I know you had much more things to do and to give out in your life, but I guess it was your time to go with God. God needed a special angel to help him, and you were chosen among others by him. Your faith got through so many challenges and situations without any fear, always with God at your side. You taught me how to believe. Thank you, Luillo, for being my son, for being the most important person in my life, for being my best friend and always there for me. Thanks for being Luillo, for your existence in my life for those 26 years we shared together. You made me the happiest father in the world. Thanks for being so special and being everything in my life. The one and only Luillo. I will never stop loving you. I miss you every second in my life. Life is not the same without you, but I can promise you I will live it without fear and like it was my last day on it. In honor to you and all you did for my life, I will try to live it happy like you did. Love you, my Luillo, forever, papi. I want to thank God. I want to thank Anna for giving me the best child in the world. I want to thank life. Special thanks to my psychologist, Janina del Toro, my case manager, Ania Gibbs, to all my friends that have been on top of me and giving me support in my worst moment in my life. Thanks for being part of our life. A mi familia Bermúdez, párense por favor, a Claudia, a mi nena, las amo, las adoro. Sin ustedes yo no estaría aquí. If there were not for them, for my family, I wouldn't be here. So thank you, Claudia, Isabela, Daniela, Mami, Yeye, Eric, Maggie, I love you forever. Thank you. This is my Luillo, and look the happiness and the face of the smile that he had forever. This is for you.
I would like to call up Ashley Dean, sister of Cassie Bilodeau Stratton.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Dean, and I'm the big sister of Cassie Bilodeau Stratton. And since Cassie's passing, life has been very difficult for our family. But we hold a lot of gratitude for all the first responders and just everyone that helped. We appreciate everyone. Cassie and I were very close, and our sister theme was Frozen. And she'd call me up in the middle of the night. Do you want to build a snowman? So now I think we're building sandcastles in the skies. I'm going to miss Cassie. Hey, Mom. And my brother-in-law is taking wonderful care of my niece. We all have spent this past year struggling with the pain and the sorrow for a while now. And moving forward, we want to remain strong now. We want to honor Cassie now. We want to honor 98. We're all 98 now. We're all family. We've been unified. I appreciate, and my family appreciates, the change that will come with this type of tragedy. The new 4D bill marks the horizon of things to come so that nothing like this ever happens again to any family, and that Cassie's life will save thousands, if not millions, in the lives of everyone that were lost that day. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate all the love, and I will always stand strong for my 98 family. 98. Thank you.
would like to call up Raquel Oliveria, wife of Alfonso Leon, who was 48, and mother of Lorenzo, who was 5.
My name is Raquel Oliveira. I am a Brazilian. I lived for 37 years in Rio de Janeiro. And I moved to the US when our son Lorenzo was born because we were looking for a safer place for him to live. In June 24th of 2021, at 4 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang. My friend on the other end of the line asked me to stay calm, but it looked like something had happened in my building. It looks like a part of your building has collapsed, she said. At that moment, I remember that my first question, feeling fear in my whole body, was, "Where is my son?" After her silence, I couldn't say anything else. I was breathless, and my voice wouldn't come out to tell my mom, who was with me, what had happened. After that minute, my life turned into a succession of events in autopilot. I had to give my DNA to identify my son, who 27 days before had turned 5 years old, with a garden party at Champlain Towers, right here where all of you are sitting, for more than 60 people, children and parents. It was the first party after the pandemic, and everybody was really happy to be here. For weeks, I attended the morning and afternoon meetings in search for the corpses of my partner and my son, who I saw for the last time on June 23rd last year, right before traveling. Exactly 365 days ago, my house imploded, collapsed, with everything and everyone inside but me. It took my family 2 weeks to be found. Their bodies were decomposed. They were cremated in a white paper box, and I still remember the smell coming out of the box. I wrote a message on each box before they went to be cremated. But with Alfredo Leone, my partner, and Lorenzo de Oliveira Leone, my son, 96 other people were gone. And instead of commemorating the deaths of all of them, I want them to be remembered for who they were in life. They didn't die. Their lives were interrupted. I wish each of us could get to the point where we can use the pain that filled us as an impetus to make their presence eternal. Everyone will find their own way. We already have people creating foundations to help with the mental health of each of us. We already have people writing books, others on a tireless path to change the laws so that other families don't go through this. Yesterday, I read of a grandson that created a line of cigars to honor his grandparents that came from Cuba. I always try to teach Lorenzo that we must be intentional, that we must be aware of the consequences of our decisions. We must be accountable in the lives of those we cross, in the community, on the planet. I hope each one of us finds our purpose. I still can't think about my future, and my purpose is still out there. My home isn't ready yet, I still live with a suitcase around the world. Exactly 365 days ago, my house imploded, my home collapsed with everything and everyone inside but me. I am alive and I have the chance to rediscover something that motivates me to smile again, to fight, to be a whole person. Maybe we don't know it yet, but we cannot give up. We need answers, we need justice, we need something that I hate the word that is patience. And to find a personal way to make up for it all and to live again. Recognize the privileges that we have, recognize the weaknesses, learn, improve, and move on. It's not easy to go on without those we love. For those who were there that night, it will not be easy to go back to sleep peacefully after hearing cries for help, running down collapsing stairs, waiting for rescue on the balcony of a collapsing building. We are a village. We go through devastating moments, but together we can do a lot. Let's not give up justice, love, gratitude, forgiveness. Let's not give up life. We have not come this far to just come this far. Thank you.
I'd like to call up Kevin Spiegel, husband of Judy Spiegel.
Dr. Biden, elected officials, pre-hospital care providers, the United States Search and Rescue, the Israeli Defense Force, Rabbi Lipsker, and all the Surfside families. Good morning. This has been the most difficult year in my life and my family's life as my wife, Judith Ann Spiegel, Yehudit Bas Mordechai, was killed in the Champlain Tower collapse alongside your 97 loved ones. 8777 Collins Avenue, apartment 603, was my home, and our family lost everything. I know what it means to feel profound loss, and 1 year later, time has not healed my broken heart. Like all of you, I carry this extreme void with me because Judy's life was taken away from us so abruptly. Judy was the matriarch of our family. I did not even know where our bank account was. I was lost and continued to struggle daily, just like all of you. Judy was the CEO of our family. She supported me in my career. She is responsible for being the best mother to my 3 children, Rachel, Michael, and Joshua, my son-in-law, Seth, and my daughter-in-law, Laura. I love you all. She also helped care for my 90-year-old mother. She was passionate about supporting her friends. Dr. June Scobie Rogers, whose previous husband was the commander of the Challenger. Judy would travel with June to NASA-related events regarding Challenger and the Challenger Center. Judy was a student of the Holocaust. Her friend Eva Schloss, a Holocaust survivor who grew up on the same street of Anne Frank in Amsterdam,
After the war, Eva's mother married Otto Frank, which makes Eva Anne Frank's stepsister. Judy traveled with Eva throughout this country. Eva would give lectures to children and adults about the Holocaust, and Judy would be there for her because every time was such a difficult time for her. It has been extremely hard not waking up next to my best friend every morning. As I am grieving my profound loss, what has given me strength throughout this past year is people that were there for me during the loss, this tragic loss. We have visited cities in New York, Southampton, Memphis, Chattanooga, Panama City, Panama, where we sponsored the kiddishes in Judy's memory and talked about her life, and Surfside. We wanted to do something really significant, so we decided, all of my family, we went to Israel. We wanted to go to Israel to meet with our family, but more importantly, to thank the Surfside IDF from the Home Front Command. We thought that was a very important thing for our healing. And we went there and we met with Colonel Golan and General Gordon and the Home Front Command. We got to go through one of their training exercises and be there while they trained. And they even made us falafel. Thank you. But that was very important for us. The mayor of Bal Harbor, Gabe Grossman, came to that event as well. And even we had Shabbos with the Prime Minister. These were unbelievable part of our healing, and our family is committed to give back to those who gave to us. I want to also acknowledge Dr. Dario Gonzalez from the New York USART team and Dr. Joe Holly from the Tennessee USART team. I knew both Dario and Joe from my work as a pre-hospital care provider and the commander from the New York DMAT team. Both gentlemen knew Judy and loved her and came to her funeral as well. Judy loved her family. She loved her family and friends, and she was the fabric that kept all of us together. She had a heart of gold. Judy taught us everything about life. She taught us about Yiddishkeit, the importance of a Jewish education, and supported Israel. She was the most loyal person I have ever met and always found fun in everything she did. If there is one thing I can leave everyone with today, is that hope to inspire everyone to be more like Judy. Life is short, and we need to focus on people we love. I hope we can remember Judy's beautiful spirit and smile. I love you all. I love all the families. God bless America, and God bless the state of Israel. Thank you. Hi, Brianna.
I would like to call up Martin Langesfeld, brother of Nikki Langesfeld.
It is in our hardest moments
when we realize how fortunate we once were. It is in our lowest moments, when we try to put reality into a perspective which we will never find a clear answer for. Looking back at this past year, we can all agree that we have tried to wake up from this nightmare, yet realize that we have no choice but to accept this nightmare as the unchangeable reality we were thrown into and will never understand why. A lot has occurred this past year, but one thing is for sure. We realize how valuable our time in this short life is. Looking over this deep, empty hole next to us fills our insides with helpless pain, unanswered questions, and memories that will never be forgotten. Now within us, we also have a hole now, which could not be repaired with anything but time. And even then, we are not sure if time will heal, because this is not something one has ever lived through. As life goes on, we will never find a way to cover the scars created within us. But what we will do is slowly find a way in learning how to walk around the hole forever engraved within us. The hole that took away countless innocent loved ones. As I speak, I could do nothing but remember that big, bright, beautiful smile my sister Nikki carried with her. And many times that big, bright smile was next to the man she loved, who were both ready to start their lives in a place they called home. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that each and every person standing and sitting in front of me could come up here and speak endlessly about how beautiful, admired, and impactful their loved ones were and continue to be. And that is exactly what they all deserve. Nikki, just like the 97 others that were taken together, left their marks in this world in an unexplainable way. We will never comprehend. But they need to know that down here, regardless at what age they were taken, those lives have impacted the world in such a way that will change how systems work. Not only the legislative system. I'm talking about the system of life. The system where we as a community learned we could not take one single second for granted. Because one day, when we least expect it, that 1 second will be our last second. And what we leave behind is the light and love which follow our legacy. Now behind me are very well-respected individuals who worked extremely hard to get to where they are. And no matter when their last days are, they have already made an impact one way or another. Speaking by your side, I would like to say thank you for showing us that sometimes behind cameras, there could be people, real people with emotions. And as I say that, I would also like to mention how we know that none of you expected to be involved in this tragedy. None of us did. But as you worked hard to get where you are and where you currently sit, we ask for your help. Please help us in finding answers. We need them. Please help us in working together with the developer who purchased this land. Let's find a way to incorporate a fitting memorial on a portion of the collapsed site. It's where our loved ones took their last breath, and it's the least we can do as a country to honor and respect where they called home. A simple gesture like this will not only bring peace to us, but will show the world that no matter what happens in the United States of America, we respect the space where our innocent loved ones were taken, not build over them. And this is meant with no disrespect whatsoever. I'm just a brother looking for honor and respect for those who are no longer with us. Thank you.
One of the greatest spiritual leaders of our time, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, said, "The deepest potential is found in our brokenness, insecurities, and emotional wounds." When the Champlain Towers came down and our town was broken, we all came together. There were many heroes born in the aftermath of this great tragedy. The Surfside Commission just recently passed a proclamation that proclaims the month of June 2022 as Surfside Heroes Appreciation Month here in Surfside. This proclamation has a paragraph for each of the organizations and individuals being recognized here today. In addition, we have created a challenge coin to commemorate this special day, which will be presented to these individuals. The coin has the image of two hands reaching out to each other. The image the hands make as they touch each other is a representation of the infinity sign, symbolizing that the memories of the 98 souls will live on in our hearts forever. On behalf of the town of Surfside community and those that were affected, I would like to recognize several outstanding individuals and organizations that were integral in their own way in responding to this tragedy, starting with our beloved first responders. I would like to recognize the entire Surfside Police Department for their actions and valiant efforts. For their actions and valiant efforts on the night of the collapse. As the first responders on the scene, their quick actions and professionalism in the face of chaos and tragedy no doubt saves lives as they led people away from the building to safety. Accepting on behalf of the Surfside Police Department, I would like to call up Officer Joseph Matthews, Officer Greg Lovett, and Officer Ariel Leish, and Officer Camille Gambirazio, who were the first to respond to the scene that terrible night. As with any catastrophe, minor or major, our fire rescue is always there on the front lines, putting their lives in jeopardy to save lives of others. During this unprecedented event, fire rescue teams across South Florida came together expeditiously and effectively with one goal in mind: the safety of the survivors and to immediately begin the search and rescue. Leading the charge was Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. On behalf of Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, I would like to call up Captain Taft Parker, Lieutenant Jennifer Curlin, and Battalion Chief Victoria Bird. No words can adequately describe the dedication, care, professionalism of the urban search and rescue teams, otherwise known as USAR. From the moment they were called upon from across the country and for the weeks that followed, they were searching relentlessly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, through dangerous and challenging conditions, digging through fire, smoke, and shifting rubble and debris. They did not stop. They did not sleep. They cried, they consoled, and they continued their mission with focus and determination. Accepting on behalf of the urban search and rescue teams, I would like to call up from Florida Task Force 1, Maggie Castro. Florida Task Force 2, Stuart Morgenstein. Florida Task Force 3, Andy Capeltelli. Florida Task Force 4, Walter Lewis. Florida Task Force 5, Sheen Hatchett. Florida Task Force 6, Shane Silbert. Florida Task Force 7, Alan Willis. Florida Task Force 8, Todd Lates. Ohio Task Force 1, Mike Cassie. New Jersey Task Force 1, Kevin Morrissey. And Virginia Task Force 2, Edward Landgrover. From the moment the news of the collapse spread across the world, the Israeli search and rescue team mobilized and was ready to come to Surfside and assist in any way they can. Led by their extraordinary team leader, Colonel Golan Vach, from the moment they arrived, they headed straight to the pile and did not leave until the last of the 98 souls were recovered. Accepting on behalf of the Israeli search and rescue team, I would like to call up Colonel Golan Vach. I would like to invite the team to come up as well. The Miami-Dade Police Department was charged with the sole responsibility of maintaining and protecting the integrity of the scene while protecting the safety and security of the residents of Surfside. But most importantly, ensuring that those recovered from the collapse were treated with dignity and respect. Accepting on behalf of the Miami-Dade Police Department, I would like to call up Miami-Dade Chief Public Safety Officer, Alfredo Freddy Ramirez. Immediately after the collapse, the town of Surfside's community center became the gathering spot for evacuated residents and family members arriving from all over, waiting to hear news about their missing loved ones. It became the hub of activity and transformed into a disaster relief center. Our town staff was working 18-plus hours a day for weeks straight. They were performing duties well beyond the scope of their job description, and at times pushed to the limits of their strength. Accepting on behalf of the amazing employees of the town of Surfside, I would like to call up our town manager, Andrew Hyatt. As with any disaster, spiritual guidance is integral. After the collapse, the shul not only provided spiritual help, but became a hub for emergency provisions, financial aid, and emotional support. Its rabbis, staff, and community did not stop for a moment during this entire ordeal and continues its efforts to this very day. Accepting on behalf of the shul, I would like to call up Rabbi Shalom Lipsker. The Jewish Community Service, JCS, was on the scene providing emotional support through their dedicated therapists for all those affected. They continue to counsel those affected and provide aid and support to the victims of this tragedy. Accepting on behalf of the JCS, I would like to call up Heather Winter, Chief Programs Officer, Sandra Ella, Senior Director, Case Management Programs, and Vera Muzikansky, Disaster Case Management Programs. As a community-based humanitarian organization, the American Red Cross of South Florida region mobilized its volunteers to Surfside. As soon as they arrived, they started organizing and provided much-needed aid and supplies to the victim. On behalf of the Red Cross, I would like to call up Joseph Valdez, Regional Chief Executive Officer, Debbie Koch, Executive Director, Greater Miami, and Ryan Logan, Regional Disaster Officer. From the moment the Global Empowerment Mission arrived in Surfside, they started providing family necessities kits for victims. They provided funds to help family members traveling in and displaced unit owners. They continue to provide financial aid to the survivors to help them with long-term recovery. Accepting on behalf of GEM, I would like to call up Kimberly Bentley and Danush Caponi. Volunteers from Chesed Shel Emes remained on site throughout the rescue and recovery efforts from all over the United States, ensuring that all those recovered were treated with the utmost respect and dignity, as per the halachic traditions. I would like to call up, on behalf of Chesed Shel Emes, Mark Rosenberg. Hatzalah of South Florida was on the scene providing medical aid to the victims and remained on site throughout the rescue and recovery efforts, providing medical aid to the search and rescue teams. On behalf of Hatzalah, I would like to call up Michael Strongen, Baruch Sandhaus, and Andre Reutman. Yedidim USA set up a command center in Surfside with over 2,000 volunteers, which prepared over 50,000 meals that fed families and first responders and provided emergency supplies and equipment throughout the search and rescue recovery efforts. Accepting on behalf of Yedidim, I would like to call up Iran Hazan and Noah Hazan. Strong for Surfside was a movement formed by many businesses, organizations, and private citizens who joined together, providing aid and support during the chaotic weeks that followed. Accepting on behalf of Strong for Surfside, I would like to call up Sam Zvoluni and Ellie Ginsberg. Anytime. EZS is comprised of three young residents who got together and started a fund for the victims. This fund collected over $1.5 million. EZS was recently recognized by Miami-Dade County for its charity work, and we're proud to be able to do the same. Accepting on behalf of EZS, I would like to call up Ephraim Safransky, Zushi Litkowski, and Svia Ben-Sion. I would like to take a quick moment to recognize and mention some of the other organizations and charities that provided much-needed aid and support to the victims of the collapse. Young Israel, Casa Church, St. Joseph's Catholic Church, Surfside Publix, Grand Beach, Seaview, Resident Inn, Surfside Businesses, Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, Coral Gables Community Partners for Support Surfside, and Leo Soto from the Wall of Hope Memorial. There were so many more who gave so much. Unfortunately, it's impossible to stand here and name them all. But for those individuals who are not mentioned here today, please know that your support meant the world to the families and the victims. We will now have a reading of the names of the 98 departed souls. I would like to call up the following task force members who were in the rubble looking for these missing people to read the names of the 98 departed souls. Maggie Castro, Stuart Morgenstein, Andy Capelti, Walter Lewis, Sean Hatchett, Shane Silbert, Alan Willis, Todd Lates, Mike Cassis, Kevin Morrissey, and Edward Landgrover.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the first responders and the USAR task forces present here today, we are absolutely humbled to stand here in front of you. Despite the pain and sorrow that is emanating from every human being at the site, let us also find solace and hope in the love and humanity that we are all feeling by sitting here together side by side. Let us remember those who left us too early, and although they are not here in person, they are here in all of our hearts. We will now honor your loved ones by reading their names. Luis Fernando Barth Tobar. Catalina Gomez Ramirez. Valeria Barth. Mercedes Fuentes Urgeles. Raymond Urgeles. Arnold Notkin. Maria Caspi Notkin. Harold Rosenberg. Lisa Rosenberg.
Stuart Morgenstein, Florida Task Force 2, Miami. Benny Wise. Julio Velasquez. Angela Velasquez. Marina Restrepo Asin. Vishal Patel. Bhavna Patel. Ashani Jia Patel. Richard Roverosa.
Andrew Capoletti, Florida Task Force 3 in the Tampa Bay region. Maria Teresa Riverosa. Andres Levine. Moises Rodon. Mihai Radulescu. Maria Papa Radulescu. Cassie Biladu Stratton. Rosa Sayez. Margarita Vasquez Bello. Francis Palencia.
Walter Lewis, Florida Task Force 4, Central Florida. Hilda Noriega. Miguel Angel Pazos. Michelle Anna Pazos. Anastasia Gramova. Miguel Kaufman. Gabriela Camus. Alfredo Leone. Lorenzo de Oliveira Leone. Gino Cesar Catarossi.
Sean Hatchett, Florida Task Force 5, Jacksonville. Graciela Ponce de Leon Catarossi. Andrea Maria Catarossi. Graciela Maria Catarossi. Stella Catarossi. Judith Spiegel. Estelle Hadaya. Nancy Kress Levine. Jay Kleinman. Frankie Kleinman.
Shane Seibert, Florida Task Force 6, Southwest Florida, and I'm honored. Anna Ortez Kleiman, Luis Bermudez Ortiz, Leon Lakowitz, Christina Beatrice Elvira, Nicole Duran Manisharov, Ruslan Manisharov, Manuel Lafont Jr., Andreas Yanni Soapoulos, and Fabian Nunes.
Alan Willis, Florida Task Force 7, Tallahassee, Florida. Andres Galfrascoli, Sofia Galfrascoli Nunez, Marcus Joseph Guara, Ana L. Rodriguez, Lucia Carolina Guara, Emma Karina Guara, Luis Sadovnik, Nicole Langesfeld, Edgar Gonzalez.
Todd Leeds, Florida Task Force 8, North Central Florida. David Epstein, Bonnie Epstein, Antonio Lozano, Gladys Lozano, Oresme Gil Guerra, Beatriz Rodriguez, Magali Elena Delgado, Gonzalo Torre, Maria Torre.
Michael Case, Ohio Task Force 1, Dayton, Ohio. Claudia Bonafoy, Maricoy Obias Bonafoy, Juan Alberto Mora, Ana Maria Mora, Juan Alberto Mora Jr., Stacy Fang, Sofia Lopez Maria, Luis Pettengill, Lady Vanessa Luna Villalba.
Good morning. Kevin Morrissey, New Jersey Task Force 1. Honored and humbled to be here. Alexis Morera Pettengill. Anna Sophia Pettengill. Luis Lopez Morera III. Michael Altman. Zavi Ainsworth. Iddy Ainsworth. Gary Cohen. Brad Cohen. Deborah Berisdevin.
Edward Land Grover, Virginia Task Force 2. Ilan Nabrif. Gloria Machado. Simon Siegel. Linda March. Richard Augustine. Elaine Leah Howard Sabino. Elena Chavez. And Elena Blasser.
Teresa Velasquez. I want to thank all the members of the USAR teams, especially the ones that came in from out of state to do this. I know it means a lot to the families that the names of their loved ones was read by the people that were on the rubble looking for them. Thank you. We will now have a moment of silence for quiet reflection or prayer. I would like to call upon Father Sosa, pastor of St. Joseph's Church, to lead us in benediction. Father Sosa provided spiritual guidance, mentorship, and healing for those affected by this tragedy and regularly to the residents of our community.
Merciful Lord, you know the anguish of the sorrowful, and you are attentive to the prayers of the humble. Hear your people who cry out to you in their need, after 1 year, still in their need, and strengthen their hope in your lasting goodness. We have gathered to remember to hear your words of healing. A year ago, we cried out as a people who felt at first what the book of Lamentations says: our souls are deprived of peace and cannot find happiness anywhere. That was the text. But when the time arrived, we have placed our hope in you, and even with our broken hearts, we have proclaimed with you a different text from the Bible. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that he will at last stand forth upon the dust. For I myself shall see God with my own eyes. And then we also heard the words of the New Testament that announce a truth from which we cannot hide away. I quote, "We know that we have passed from death to life because we love our brothers and sisters. Whoever does not love remains death." Bless us, God of the living and of the dead. Help us to overcome this tragedy by loving one another more, by loving all our brothers and sisters, whatever race, culture, religious preference they may be found, especially those that have been taken from us. And as we mourn their death, show us the immense power of your goodness. Strengthen our belief that each one of the souls we have mentioned has entered into your presence. And then, of course, O God, continue to comfort their beloved families and friends. We pray this in God. Amen.
Thank you, Father Sosa. Before we conclude our program, I would like to take a moment to thank all the vendors and staff, especially our Public Works Department, who worked so hard to set up this event. Each one of them knew the importance of their work, and they all went the extra mile to ensure that this site would be ready for this weekend. It was very important for the family members to have the event on this site, and I want to thank the property receiver, Michael Goldberg, for making sure their request could be a reality. I want to thank and acknowledge our communications director, Frank Trigoris. His tireless efforts and complete dedication to ensuring the success of this weekend's event has made all this possible. Thank you, Frank. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this concludes our program. I would ask that all the USAR members here today please come up to the stage momentarily, as we would like to present you with a challenge coin. Also, if representation or representatives from each of the fire and law enforcement department presidents can come up as well. Thank you.
You've just been listening in to the Surfside Memorial, the public memorial service that's been going on all morning long. The mayor there, Shlomo Denzinger, wrapping things up after reading off the names, all 98 victims that we're remembering a year since the Champlain Towers South collapse on June 24th.
And of course, we're going to have much more coverage on the anniversary of the Surfside condo collapse, but we actually want to go ahead and send things over in Washington, D.C., where President Joe Biden is talking after the release of that opinion that is overturning Roe v. Wade. So let's listen in.
Women have the power to control their own destiny. And it reinforced a fundamental right of privacy, the right of each of us to choose how to live our lives. Now, with Roe gone, let's be very clear. The health and life of women in this nation are now at risk. As chairman and ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, as vice president and now as president of the United States, I've studied this case carefully. I've overseen more Supreme Court confirmations than anyone today, where this case was always discussed. I believe Roe v. Wade was the correct decision as a matter of constitutional law and application of the fundamental right to privacy and liberty in matters of family and personal autonomy. It was a decision on a complex matter that drew a careful balance between a woman's right to choose earlier in her pregnancy and the state's ability to regulate later in her pregnancy. A decision with broad national consensus that most Americans of faith and backgrounds found acceptable, that had been the law of the land for most of the lifetime of Americans today. And it was a constitutional principle upheld by justices appointed by Democrat and Republican presidents alike. Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 decision written by a justice appointed by a Republican president, Richard Nixon. In the 5 decades that followed Roe v. Wade, justices appointed by Republican presidents from Eisenhower, Nixon, and Reagan, George W. Bush, were among the justices who voted to uphold the principles set forth in Roe v. Wade. It was 3 justices named by one president, Donald Trump, who were the core of today's decision to upend the scales of justice and eliminate a fundamental right for women in this country. Make no mistake, this decision is a culmination of a deliberate effort over decades to upset the balance of our law. It's a realization of an extreme ideology and a tragic error by the Supreme Court, in my view. The court has done what it has never done before, expressly take away a constitutional right that is so fundamental to so many Americans that had already been recognized. The court's decision to do so will have real and immediate consequences. State laws banning abortion are automatically taking effect today, jeopardizing the health of millions of women, some without exceptions. So extreme that women could be punished for protecting their health. So extreme that women and girls were forced to bear their rapist's child. With the child, a consequence. It just stuns me. So extreme that doctors will be criminalized for fulfilling their duty to care. Imagine having a young woman have to carry the child of incest as a consequence of incest. No option. Too often the case. The poor women are going to be hit the hardest. It's cruel. In fact, the court laid out state laws criminalizing abortion that go back to the 1800s as rationale. The court literally taking America back 150 years. This is a sad day for the country, in my view. But it doesn't mean the fight's over. Let me be very clear and unambiguous. The only way we can secure a woman's right to choose, the balance that existed, is for Congress to restore the protections of Roe v. Wade as federal law. No executive action from the president can do that. And if Congress, as it appears, lacks the votes to do that now, voters need to make their voices heard. This fall, we must elect more senators and representatives who will codify women's right to choose into federal law once again. Elect more state leaders to protect this right at the local level. We need to restore the protections of Roe as law of the land. We need to elect officials who will do that. This fall, Roe is on the ballot. Personal freedoms are on the ballot. The right to privacy, liberty, equality, they're all on the ballot. Until then, I will do all of my power to protect a woman's right in states where they will face the consequences of today's decision. While the court's decision cast a dark shadow over a large swath of the land, many states in this country still recognize a woman's right to choose. So, if a woman lives in a state that restricts abortion, the Supreme Court's decision does not prevent her from traveling from her home state to the state that allows it. It does not prevent a doctor in that state from treating her. As the Attorney General has made clear, women must remain free to travel safely to another state to seek care they need. My administration will defend that bedrock right. If any state or local official, high or low, tries to interfere with a woman's exercising her basic right to travel, I will do everything in my power to fight that deeply un-American attack. My administration will also protect a woman's access to medications that are approved by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, like contraception, which is essential for preventative health care, mifepristone, which the FDA approved 20 years ago to safely end early pregnancies and is commonly used to treat miscarriages. Some states are saying that they'll try to ban or severely restrict access to these medications. But extremist governors and state legislators are looking to block the mail or search a person's medicine cabinet or control a woman's actions by tracking data on her apps she uses are wrong and extreme and out of touch with the majority of Americans. The American Medical Association, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists wrote to me and Vice President Harris stressing that these laws are not based on evidence and asking us to act to protect access to care. They say by limiting access to these medicines, maternal mortality will climb in America. That's what they say. Today, I'm directing the Department of Health and Human Services to take steps to ensure these critical medications are available to the fullest extent possible. And the politicians cannot interfere in the decisions that should be made between a woman and her doctor. And my administration will remain vigilant as the implications of this decision play out. I've warned about how this decision risks the broader right to privacy for everyone. That's because Roe recognized the fundamental right to privacy that has served as a basis for so many more rights that we've come to take for granted, that are ingrained in the fabric of this country. The right to make the best decisions for your health. The right to use birth control, a married couple in the privacy of their bedroom, for God's sake. The right to marry the person you love. Now, Justice Thomas said as much today. He explicitly called to reconsider the right of marriage equality, the right of couples to make their choices on contraception. This is extreme and dangerous path the court is now taking us on. Let me close with 2 points. First, I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech. We must stand against violence in any form, regardless of your rationale. Second, I know so many of us are frustrated and disillusioned that the court has taken something away that's so fundamental. I know so many women are now going to face incredibly difficult situations. I hear you. I support you. I stand with you. The consequences and the consensus of the American people, core principles of equality, liberty, dignity, and the stability of the rule of law demand that Roe should not have been overturned. With this decision, the conservative majority of the Supreme Court shows how extreme it is, how far removed they are from the majority of this country. They've made the United States an outlier among developed nations in the world. But this decision must not be the final word. My administration will use all of its appropriate lawful powers, but Congress must act. And with your vote, you can act. You can have the final word. This is not over. Thank you very much. More to say this in weeks to come. Thank you.
You just listened to President Biden there talking about the significant Supreme Court decision to overturn the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. Now there's no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion. The president saying, quote, "It's a sad day for the court and for the country, adding, quote, the health and life of women in this country are now at risk.
But making it very clear that the fight is not over, vowing that he will make sure women will remain free to travel safely to other states to get an abortion, and also saying that his administration will do everything in its power to continue to protect access to medications such as contraceptives. So no doubt, so much going on today as we're taking a live look in front of the Supreme Court, where you can see a lot of people have gathered as we're starting to see a lot of protests erupting not only in front of the Supreme Court, but across the country.
And something that the president ended his speech there with, that you just heard with moments ago, calling for peaceful protests, emphasizing that that is absolutely necessary right now as people make their voices heard. This is in fact something that security officials at the federal level have been worried about, planning for weeks now, ever since the leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion regarding Roe v. Wade in the beginning of May. The president urging voters to make their voices heard at the ballot box, and that this is something, as Janice mentioned, that the administration is going to continue fighting against moving forward. We'll have much more on this moving forward as we keep an eye on this very